Hello everyone, Angel here with a long overdue TFTC update video. This one might be a bit longer than my usual update videos as there's some extra stuff I want to touch upon that's been going on with my life, so do bear with me for the next couple of minutes before I deep dive into what's been going on with TFTC proper. Almost nothing has happened in the last month because, well, I've been on holiday and pretty much noped out of anything work or hobby related, focusing only on my family and myself. This has been sorely needed for me because life has just been, well, crushingly busy with my real life job, which has been facing many pressures, which has been adding some stress, and then of course being a family man with a young child, and then finally on top of that is TFTC, which itself might as well be a full-time job. And finally, things to do in my personal time to just wind down. And then in February I found out that I'm almost certainly on the autistic spectrum, as well as some likely ADHD thrown in for good measure. So I'm currently in the early road to getting an official diagnosis for that, but basically the entire tapestry of my life started to make so much more sense, as well as giving me a greater understanding of myself. However, it has also given me some new challenges and struggles to deal with now that I do know. I'm not going to go into the nitty-gritty details because that's not what you come to this channel for, but what I will say is that as I continue to understand what this means for myself, I realise just how much I'm actually putting on to myself as well, which is really not good for my mental health, and learning to basically say no to things when people ask me to help with something or doing other things myself so I can make sure that my focus is geared entirely towards TFTC. This means, for example, that I'll probably stop doing any Let's Play videos until TFTC is completed, or at least I feel comfortable doing them again. I will at least finish the Half-Life 1 playthrough before that so that, it's at least done. But at the end of the day, I want my limited energies focused on TFTC when I have the time to do so. What's important right now though is that I'm back from my holidays, more or less refreshed and ready to continue the important work of getting TFTC completed. So, let's break this down and start with where the project is right now. Currently, we are still working on version 1.4 of TFTC to bring it to compatibility with the recently released X-Wing Alliance Upgrade 2025 version. This version will include the HD concourse, engine stability and optimization improvements, updated sound effects, some updated weapon behaviours, more on this later, numerous fixes and major changes to some parts of the current Reimagined campaign. One of the biggest updates will be the installation process itself. XWAU 2025 introduced the Installer Manager. This handy tool will do pretty much everything for you, from downloading the required files, creating copies of your X-Wing Alliance installation, and keeping track of any patches or updates. Patches themselves should be easier to push as well as a result of this. This will hopefully simplify what has become a bit of a complicated installation process over the years. Another major change will be the removal of the Palpatine Total Converter and the separation of Classic and Reimagined into their own separate installers. This will mean you can no longer simply swap between Classic and Reimagined, but instead will need separate installations for them. This has been done to simplify things on our side, as it was just getting too cumbersome and difficult to maintain the converter tool without causing issues when swapping versions. By separating them, we can also do patch updates to either version separately. This may mean from version 1.4 onwards that version numbers might start diverging between Reimagined and Classic as patches are delivered. Currently we are only testing version 1.4 of Reimagined. This was going pretty well and was nearly ready before my holidays, but then I realised we had a pretty severe problem with some stuttering lag in the largest of battles of B7M1 and B7M3 for Reimagined, as you can see on the screen now, which caused a bit of a blocker to further progress for some time. The causes of this have finally been identified and largely mitigated, but it is something I will still need to bear in mind moving forward with the larger battles and the upcoming rebalance as well. Additional optimization and stability updates are also coming though, which are part of XWAU 2025. This includes the addition of 2 new side process executables that will now launch alongside with the game. This addresses the more recent instability of the mod that started popping up more frequently in the last year, with crashes happening more often than in the past. This is because we were essentially hitting hard 32-bit memory limitations, which became exacerbated when we added the HD concourse and their animations in version 1.4, which caused a big spike in RAM usage, complicated by the engine itself not flushing said RAM properly when it was no longer needed, causing memory fragmentation, and then eventually a crash when you tried to load or reload a mission or some other kind of loading transition. So these 2 new side processors are 64-bit containers that perform RAM-heavy calculations and then send those instructions to the X-Wing Alliance executable. Don't you just love creative workarounds? Moving on to the actual gameplay content, 1.4 will see some significant mission changes to the Reimagined campaign, with several missions getting complete makeovers or redesigns that have been part of the Rebalance Project, now transferred and modified slightly for the current balance system. This includes a completely brand new mission that replaces the current version of Battle 3 Mission 4. Previously, this mission had you defending NL1 from an assault, but it's now been redesigned to something quite different, and I'll let you find out what that is. As mentioned earlier, there are also some updated weapon behaviours. This is only applied to Starship combat, but taking advantage of everything I've learned in the last year or so with the tools I've gained, I've now applied some of this to version 1.4, but without any of the damage changes that Rebalance contains. This is mostly restricted to very specific mission profiles where ships will have greater ranges and also have more inaccurate fire. An example is that in B7M3 now, when Death Squadron arrives, it will rain down fire on Zaren's fleet, but at very long ranges, making it largely ineffective, but very cinematic. Other changes include a plethora of updated sound effects, some updated visuals, including the enhanced HUD when in flight. This adds shield and health bars to the side of the reticule, as well as giving a craft's name and distance, which means you don't have to glance down to your CMD anymore to get this information. This feature can be disabled easily if you don't want it, especially if you just want to immerse yourself in the cockpit readouts, or you can just go further and tweak the position, size and colour of the bars yourself. But anyway, what about TFTC Classic version 1.4? At the moment, Classic is somewhat broken on version 1.3.4a due to the missile boat warhead launchers not working properly, so it's important that we fix this and bring Classic up to date as well with all the new features. One of those new features will be to bring all laser speeds to their original game speeds. This was tried briefly before we released TFTC back in 2021, but it wasn't so well received in testing. Now, with the new tools, rather than just being a complex executable patch making it difficult to simply transition, it's now a simple global INI change, and because of that, this can be toggled on and off nice and easily. Bear in mind that this does impact balance if it's enabled or not, because, laser speeds being faster might make it harder. But other than that, Classic won't really be getting any other major changes besides the updated concourse, fixes, and the laser speed changes. And then, what about the future of the Rebalance Project? In case you're not familiar with the Rebalance, this represents a fundamental, ground-up redesign of the game's combat and gameplay to be more dynamic and interesting, with each starfighter getting its own unique feel, stats, and role, while capital ships become the deadly ships they're supposed to be, but never were. This has been somewhat on pause for the last few months as we work on 1.4, but before my holiday I just completed a huge update and refinement to all the capital ship combat, and that is now reflected on the massive Miro board I have, showcasing all these changes. I've also posted a few clips of some Starship battle testing as well. In the end, Rebalance will eventually become TFTC Reimagined version 2.0, along with the remaining unfinished campaign missions. Once version 1.4 is out, I will finally update the Rebalance Alpha with a new version for compatibility and including all the latest capital ship updates, which you can then test yourself if you come join our Discord server. I just want to stress I really appreciate anyone who wants to come and help test and give me feedback. It is so important that I get feedback on any changes that I do so that I know that it's fun, yeah? So please come and join us, please help me test. I really appreciate it. Oh, and one final thing for TFTC. Do you remember I said a few years ago that we were having a new intro cutscene made for us by Otaking? This is now finished and was delivered to me several months ago, and what you're seeing on your screen right now are snippets from that cutscene. Right now, I have hired a talented chap who also worked on Otaking's previous Star Wars video to score the soundtrack for this cutscene, and then we just need to add in things like sound effects and whatnot to it. So these clips you're seeing on screen is all you're going to get for the time being. And that I think covers all the news regarding TFTC at least. But there is one final thing I would like to mention. A few weeks ago, the XWVM team released their first public alpha for the project, and I very highly recommend you try it out. It's amazing work by the team involved, and eventually will include TIE Fighter as well as X-Wing in its compatibility. Remember, you need to own a copy of the original X-Wing for this to work, which I recommend you purchase from Good Old Games. In the very long run, it's highly possible that I will be able to transfer TFTC Reimagined to the XWVM engine, allowing it to be a completely updated and new experience. TFTC Classic, meanwhile, I suspect will simply be superseded by an XWVM version of TIE Fighter as a better option, since that will be much closer to an original, remastered experience of the original game, since they can, for example, having all the character briefing rooms and dynamic texts which X-Wing Alliance just simply doesn't allow for. For the TIE Fighter purists out there, it will certainly be much more in line with expectations than what TFTC can currently provide, and I'm totally okay with that. Our version can stand on its own, just as another way to play it. And that, my friends, is that for this long-asked update. If you managed to stick with me to the end, thank you very much for your time. I hope to do some live streaming soon with TFTC development, so stay tuned and do join our Discord server if you haven't already. I am always happy to chat to the community and answer questions about the project. Until next time, pilots, fly safe.